Livestream and podcast. I'm Patrick Pfingsten, coming to you pre-taped kind of a little bit from Springfield this afternoon, as we are in Springfield for the end of the lame duck session last night and inauguration of the new General Assembly today on Wednesday. So we're not in our usual digs, and if any lighting or anything like that is a little off, well, sorry. We are obviously keeping eyes on the new General Assembly, two new Republican leaders, Tony McComey in the House, John Curran in the Senate, the Speaker and the Senate President also, of course, will keep their jobs as a whole crop of new lawmakers comes in today after redistricting and new Democratic majorities. Largest Democratic majority ever in the House, and Democrats continue to keep their supermajority in the Senate as well as they're sworn in today. The big story at the end of the lame duck session last night was not only the passage of an assault weapons ban, but the almost immediate signature on the bill by the governor last night. Because the bill has an immediate effective date, Democrats didn't waste their time. They didn't waste any time getting the bill signed into law, and an assault weapons ban is in effect today in the state of Illinois. Why did this happen? It was clearly in response to Highland Park, the July 4th shooting in that suburban community where 7 people were killed and a 21-year-old who clearly had no business with a gun, probably shouldn't have had a FOID card, was able to purchase an AR-15 style rifle and opened fire on a crowd. And Governor Pritzker said last night, signing the bill, that was the motivation behind this gun ban.
7 families lost loved ones. A 2-year-old child was left parentless. 36 people were injured, all because our state and our nation has been held hostage by the NRA and their allies time and time again. After nearly every mass shooting, we've seen efforts to ban dangerous weapons thwarted, and then leaders send their thoughts and prayers while they throw their hands up, resigning themselves to the idea that gun violence is a sacrifice that Americans must accept. But it doesn't have to be that way.
So that's the governor last night signing the bill. The shot at the NRA was very clearly one of those subtle things that he's been doing to help himself on a national stage if he were to get engaged in a presidential campaign. We'll talk to Todd Vandermyde here in a few minutes. He's a former NRA lobbyist in the state of Illinois, who is one of the leading gun rights advocates in the state. He's obviously, as you can imagine, not happy about this bill, and he and a whole bunch of Republican lawmakers said last night that they aren't going to comply with this bill, specifically the provision that requires serial numbers of existing AR-15 style rifles, semi-automatic rifles, to be documented and tied to your FOID card, essentially. Here's how the governor responded to those threats of noncompliance.
Well, you don't get to choose which laws you comply with in the state of Illinois. Let's be clear. The fact is that, yes, there are, of course, people who are trying to politically grandstand, who want to make a name for themselves by claiming that they will not comply. But the reality is that the state police is responsible for enforcement, as are all law enforcement all across this state. And they will, in fact, do their job, or they won't be in their job.
Our friend Bob Morgan from Deerfield was the sponsor of the legislation. He has a lot on his plate over the last a couple of days, so we'll have him on in the next few weeks to kind of recap where they're coming from, what they intend with this bill, and why they think it's the right way to go. But we did, we did talk to him on this show a couple of months ago. I can send that link out on Twitter a little bit later. But it's obviously a controversial topic, and there are millions of gun owners in this state. So we thought we would check in with Todd Vandermyde, who's a longtime gun lobbyist and really kind of one of the policy experts in this country or in this state, and see his thoughts after the bill was passed. So as you saw, the governor signed the assault weapons ban into law last night. It has an immediate effective date, so it's in effect now. From the opposition side, we bring in Todd Vandermyde. He's a longtime NRA lobbyist, gun rights advocate in the state. Todd, I know you've obviously been opposed to this bill from the start, this idea from the start. You've argued to me previously that it's unconstitutional. Let's start there. Why?
Well, in 2008, Heller said that, modern firearms are protected. They sat there and said that in common use firearms are protected. It's not Todd saying it, it's the court saying it. And as much as Pizza the Hut and his cohorts want to sit there and stamp their feet and pout, that's what the court said.
We can leave the personal stuff out of it, I think. But I mean, let's at least look. And you and I go way back. You know that I'm a farm kid that grew up with guns in a cabinet, but also don't understand the need for an AR-15. But let's look at this from their perspective, from Bob Morgan's perspective, who was a block away when this kid started shooting. You know what? They see this kid get access to a gun that he probably shouldn't have had access to, albeit, but these AR style rifles, the M&P 15 that this kid used, they're not being used to hunt deer. So why?
Only because we don't allow deer hunting with those style rifles in the state. Hang on. This is my AR that I use for coyote hunting. Mm-hmm. It's legal in Illinois.
Still?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, some people may not understand that. That is also a rifle I use in competition. It is the Bill of Rights. It is not the Bill of Needs. And the problem is that just like Aurora, you had another failure of law enforcement on this part to do what they should have done. And now they want to blame 2.5 million FOID card holders or gun owners for the misdeeds of some blue hair maladjusted kid who was 21 years old, who probably never got told enough in his lifetime. And with all of that, it is now that this goes back to like when the teacher used to sit there and spank or punish the entire classroom for the misdeeds of a couple. Why are the gun owners of this state being blamed for every criminal action and everything else that happens on the west side, the south side, or every depraved individual that goes on a rampage when we didn't do that?
What about the ban on switches? Does that make sense to you?
Well, full autos have been highly regulated since 1934. And the whole thing with Glock switches is that there was an airsoft company, and the switches, the components were so interchangeable that they were legal for the airsoft guns. And anytime you have you put a prohibition on something, you create a market for it, because when you tell people they can't have something, what do? They want it. Look at the illegal drug market that's out there. So with this, switches, full autos in the wrong hands are definitely a problem. And, we've dealt with that regulation since 1934 on the federal side. Switches were illegal before this bill. The parts for them were illegal before this bill under state law. They're just more illegal now. The real question is, why is the Cook County State's attorney charging those felonies under state statute as is? Are they incompetent or lazy?
I want to get back to prosecutors in a minute, so hold on to that thought. But let me ask you about the registry part with the serial numbers. This seems to be the issue that gun owners are most angry about, at least from what I'm hearing, that they're being required to essentially register their gun with the state so that the state knows what they have. Is that strictly a Second Amendment issue for you, or do you believe it's a privacy issue? What's your main beef here?
Both. Every time registration has been used by the government, it has been abused by the government. Look at Illinois. In 1982, I think it was, Jane Byrne stopped the registration of handguns in the city of Chicago. She used a registration scheme and turned it into a gun ban. And that gun ban sat for 30 years until the Supreme Court finally overturned it in McDonald v. Chicago in 2010. You now have the governor of Connecticut publicly saying that he thinks they should confiscate every registered semi-auto under their assault weapons ban, just like the governor signed last night. We just want to know where these are. Why? I have a FOID card. I passed my background check. What effing business is it of yours what I own in my house? I don't ask what you do in your bedroom. Stay out of my house. And so it's a privacy issue. Why doesn't the governor just give us all his medical records and put them online? That's the way we look at it. And it's a privacy issue. It's a two-way issue because it's never enough. Let's go back to this bill. They sat there and 18 months ago or whatever it was with House Bill 562 and the FOID Modernization Act said they wanted to increase background checks and that portion of the law was going to kick in January 1st, 2024. Last night, they upped that to July 1st of this year. It's never enough. You can't trust these guys. I won't even call them a reptile because I don't want to disparage reptiles. It's never enough. And gun owners are waking up to that. And that's why we're pissed off, because no matter how many background checks, FOID cards, fingerprints, concealed carry licenses, it's never effing enough. And we're tired of it. Enough with it. We're the good guys. We're not the guys going out and shooting up Highland Park. It wasn't us. It was some blue-haired, depraved kid, who's maladjusted for whatever, and we're being blamed for that. And yeah, we're upset about it. We're mad. We're pissed off. And enough is enough. And you are going to see massive non-compliance if this law stands. But I don't think it's going to stand. Heller was point blank to this. And, they don't like Heller. They didn't like McDonald. I beat the city of Chicago in 5 separate lawsuits over their revised ordinances. It was my case that went up on challenging the prohibition on concealed carry in this state. And when I'm done working with the lawyers that I'm working with, we are going to force feed 4 Supreme Court decisions to the governor and the leaders of the General Assembly, and I'm gonna include a bottle of Tabasco with it.
You mentioned the non-compliance that was threatened by a lot of lawmakers yesterday, and the State Rifle Association essentially said we don't want people to break the law, but I don't expect people to follow this. Why would you all blatantly say I'm not going to follow the law? I mean,
why did Rosa Parks not give up her seat on the bus? Why did John Lewis march through Alabama?
I mean, you're willing to go to jail for it, essentially.
Yes. Okay. Understand, I spent over 18 years in the military. I raised my right hand and took an oath to the Constitution that these guys treat like toilet paper. I sat there and wrote a blank check that said to the last breath of my body or drop of my blood. Very few of these guys in the General Assembly have ever taken that oath with that blank check. So yeah, I'm willing to go to jail, and you know what? It just speeds up a court case because now it's a criminal matter. You're gonna, and under this new safety law, they can't put us all in jail. You understand that what they wrote is so flipping ridiculous.
Well, the Safety Act's not in
this magazine, all right, that they don't like. It's a petty offense with a $1,000 fine if I violate their law.
So that's what, a 30 round magazine?
It's more than 10. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So
fair enough. Is there a difference here though? I mean, listen, a Glock 19, which is maybe what the most popular handgun in the country, is a stock 17 round magazine. So that's
this is a Glock 19. It's empty. This is a 15 round gun, factory 15 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's illegal under this law. This gun
is illegal under that law.
Well, the magazine is the gun itself, but the magazine.
Well, there are semantics about the magazines that I'm not going to get into just yet until we file our lawsuit, till they see how screwed up what they wrote is. And I can't figure out if they're that mischievous in what they wrote or that stupid.
All right, since we're talking handguns, I don't have the stats, and I'm trying to find some legitimate numbers, but I've been talking to state's attorneys around the state. The majority of gun crimes in this state are done by handguns.
Yes.
And most of them already illegal, already possessed illegally, or by someone who should legally not have a handgun. And you can probably just go down the list of the shootings in Chicago every weekend of these people who probably shouldn't or legally shouldn't have a handgun. Are we misdirecting? Is the legislature and the governor, are they misdirecting their angst about gun crimes to obviously the very emotional Highland Park issue, when the real meat of the issue should be handguns and people who shouldn't have them?
Well, what I think it is, I think they took a page out of Rahm Emanuel's playbook, never let a good crisis go to waste. I think that they don't like guns. They don't like gun owners. They don't understand this culture or this people. They want to live in their bubbles, and they see what happens in the city, and they project all their fears and everything else. And with that, they sit there and they see all this and they don't like it because they can't control it. I think it's really their control freaks. They can't see, if they can't control it, it bothers them that they're not in control of their surroundings and everything else that's going around them. So with that, they sit there and they want to control everything. And then when something like Highland Park happens, and when the carnage escapes the south side or the west side and now comes into their little sandbox, they sit there and want to, control it. And they finally, you've seen the erosion of the Republican Party through DuPage County and how the Democrats have taken over, and they now have the numbers within the General Assembly to do what they want to do.
Todd, before we let you go, you're working with a group separate from the State Rifle Association that is planning a lawsuit on this. When do you expect that, and what's the first step? I assume you're asking for a stay.
We will be in court next week, would be my guess. They've been modifying this bill with 5-6 different variations of it over the last 72 hours. So it's like hitting a moving target. I've been doing this for 30 years. It took me over 8 hours to get through the 5 pages that deals with magazines to understand what they did and how bad this thing is. They attack concealed carry. They attack gun owners. They attack sales. They attack your right to acquire. They attack your right to build or modify a firearm. They attacked our privacy. Any single one of these subjects can be a lawsuit, but there's a lot to unpack here. I would wager to say you will see multiple lawsuits filed over the course of the next week.
Todd Vandermyde, former NRA lobbyist, longtime gun rights advocate in the state. Todd, thanks for the time on short notice this morning since the governor signed the bill last night. And as President Harmon said on the floor the other day, we'll see you in court.
Oh, looking forward to it. I'm looking forward. He ought to charge me. I ought to be able to charge him for continuing legal education credits for the education he's going to get.
All right. Thanks, Todd. Thanks to Todd Vandermyde for his time. Appreciate his perspective. Whether you agree or disagree, I think everybody deserves to be heard. As I mentioned, we had Bob Morgan on a couple of months ago and got his side of the issue on assault rifles. And I think Todd Vandermyde's perspective is worthwhile as well. But as we mentioned, it's Inauguration Day here in the state of Illinois for the legislature. The governor was sworn in on Monday, of course. And it was a really good reminder of the chaos here in Springfield 2 years ago when Mike Madigan was deposed as Speaker and was replaced by Chris Welch, who is, of course, now the current Speaker and will remain the Speaker after this legislature is sworn in today. We sat down with Ray Long this morning. He's a great political reporter for the Chicago Tribune. He had a great story in the paper the other day, kind of a TikTok of what happened in those final days of Madigan's tenure as Speaker. So we were happy to chat with Ray this morning. Pleased to be welcomed by Ray Long, the fantastic political reporter from the Chicago Tribune and our old friend. Ray had a great story over the weekend on kind of the TikTok of the old school TikTok, not the new TikTok, of how Mike Madigan was deposed as Speaker this week 2 years ago. Since the House and Senate are being inaugurated at this hour, we figure it was a good time to talk to Ray about how that happened and about Chris Welch's first term as Speaker. So Ray, welcome.
Thank you, Patrick.
Let's start with where we were all masked up and sequestered in the Bank of Springfield Center 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was an amazing scene there, Patrick. They had the House meeting in the Springfield Convention Center, and all of the people, as you said, were masked up, and they had to hold their caucus meetings in little rooms where they had to be spread out, but also they were heated discussions because it was a time when Michael Madigan was trying to save his speakership.
So there were 19 specific House Democrats that were essentially the no Madigan ever crowd.
Right.
The question all along was, were they going to be able to hold out?
Right.
What tipped it in their favor?
Well, they just hung together. There were 73 Democrats in the caucus. This was to elect the person who would be Speaker over the last 2 years. And those 19, mostly women, decided that they had had enough with Madigan. He had already been identified in July 2020 as public official A in what was called a deferred prosecution agreement, in which ComEd acknowledged that they had showered a variety of Madigan's allies with jobs and interns, a bundle of interns for his district. And they even put on the ComEd board a director who Madigan had recommended. And of course, Patrick, this is a state regulated, federal regulated company. And so it just shows you how he had power, and they ComEd acknowledged that they did this because they wanted to curry favor with Madigan. They wanted to make sure that he didn't do anything to block the legislation that they wanted that was very lucrative to ComEd's bottom line.
So Madigan knew that the votes weren't there. He had no luck in pushing and persuading those 19. You tell the story about Chris Welch getting a phone call from a number he didn't recognize.
Right.
How did it all break down?
Right. Welch was walking into that convention center building, going to a session, legislative session. He sees this phone number he doesn't recognize, and he sees it's a 217 area code, which is the Springfield area code. And so he goes ahead and answers, thinking it must be a staffer with some kind of news about what was going on. And it indeed was the speaker. And Welch recounted in an interview with me that the speaker said, "I've been around a long time. I don't have the votes, and would you like to be speaker?" And Madigan called a couple of other people, but he actually suggested to Welch how he could put the votes together. First, go to the Black Caucus. Welch is African American, and there were 22 members in the Black Caucus. Madigan suggested that Welch go to that caucus, seal down their votes, go to the Latino caucus, and then the downstate caucus, and try to build momentum that way. And he eventually was able to do it, but he was in a battle with Jay Hoffman, a veteran of 27 years in the legislature. He's a downstater from just outside Metro East St. Louis on the Illinois side. And he put up a fight, but he pretty much stalled out around 15 votes. You needed 60. Welch built up to about 55, and then the caucus said, "Hey, why don't you guys go settle outside the caucus room?" And when they came back in, Hoffman remained in a House Democratic leadership job, and Welch had Hoffman's support. So Welch ended up getting about 70 votes and needed 60, and he became the new Speaker of the House, the first Black Speaker of the House in the state's 2 centuries.
Was this a gift or a reward from Madigan to Welch for kind of being the protector of Madigan during that during that ethics inquiry in the House that Durkin brought up? You know, Republicans were very critical of then Representative Welch for essentially just trying to squash that investigation.
Yeah,
where did that come from?
It's a great question. I mean, Republicans have believed that is one reason that Welch got such a meteoric rise. He had been in the legislature for 8 years, but he had chaired that committee that you're talking about. Republicans, led by Jim Durkin, who was the House Minority Leader, decided that the ComEd deferred prosecution agreement showed so many allegations about the closeness between ComEd and Madigan that it should be explored further. Well, Welch didn't let the exploration go too deep, and in fact called off hearings before the election in 2020 so that they didn't come to a conclusion, and never did come to a conclusion even after the election. But he certainly blocked the investigation from going very deep into Madigan, and that really raised his cred, I guess, with House Democrats, and in particular Madigan, and that set him up for this rise in speakership. He had, of course, been a rising star at the time because he had been he'd done a good job at establishing himself well. but still, he came out of nowhere. He emerged out of nowhere in the end, and really rose fast. Sorry about that. And really rose fast. Sorry about that.
Grab that if you need to. It's fine.
Yeah.
So you can grab it if you need to. It's fine.
Okay.
Since we're taping, we can.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem. Where? How was Welch able to bring everyone together in that moment? Because obviously the Black Caucus he was part of, but it was still a relatively fractured group leading into that decision, because you had a bunch that were still with Madigan. You had a couple like Maurice West who had bucked Madigan. The Latino Caucus wanted a member of their group. Downstaters wanted a downstater. How was Welch able to bring everybody together that quickly?
Well, in fact, when he went to the Black Caucus the first time, they didn't believe that it was real, that Madigan had done what he had said was a suspension of his campaign. And that suspension was something that everybody was trying to figure out what that meant. And in fact, Welch did not get the endorsement of the Black Caucus in a meeting right off the bat. When he talked to them about his conversation with Madigan, they didn't think it was real. And as Welch told me, they wouldn't have anything of it. That first meeting didn't go so well. But 12 hours later, information flowing around the House can get around pretty fast. And the Black Caucus had changed their opinion on what Madigan was trying to do, and they solidified behind Welch. Welch went to the Latino Caucus. They also began to think it wasn't real, but he was able to bring them around within a few hours of the next day, and then downstaters too. And eventually he just kept chipping away, and this all happened in like 48 hours. There was even a moment there, Patrick, where I had written a story and posted it about Welch's past alleged treatment of women. He was accused at one point in a police report of banging the head of one ex-girlfriend onto a kitchen counter, and police were called, and the incident was written up back in 2002, and he had also been accused in a federal lawsuit of basically retaliation when he broke up with a woman who worked for Proviso Township High School District, where he was the president of the board. But he was able to convince a group of women who gathered with him in a very emotional, intense setting that this was something that he gave them answers, as the women told me, that they were comfortable with what he had to say. There was one lawmaker who told me that it also came down to a he said, she said matter. And so they went ahead and threw their support behind Welch too. But it was a touch and go moment for this large group of women in the House Democratic Caucus. But once all these issues had come together and all of the different caucuses formed around him, they were ready to do it. They wanted to go in to the official new General Assembly with their votes together and not have some kind of scattered, drawn out public debate in front of everybody like they did in Washington with the Republican nomination and eventual ascension of Kevin McCarthy as U.S. House Speaker.
And that even pales in comparison to, was it 75, where there were 95 ballots or something for Speaker?
Yeah.
I mean, we were all doing our history lessons thinking that it might be, that Madigan may just try to wait it out. But before we let you go, Ray, there's a new filing in the ComEd criminal case that involves Mike Madigan. Fill us in on that. What's going on and how does it impact Madigan?
Well, this is related to the March 6th trial of a longtime Madigan confidant, Michael McLean, the former CEO of ComEd, Ann Pramaggiore, and a couple of other lobbyists for ComEd. And it is revealing in that it tells that there will be a variety of people who will be testifying to explain the various schemes and various favors that ComEd did for Madigan to try to sway him to favor their legislation or curry favor with him, or even just to prevent him from getting angry and blocking their legislation if they didn't put some of his allies on the ComEd payroll. So it's an extraordinary filing. It came in with about 125 pages late on Tuesday night. And we're still digging through some of that, but there's going to be many more stories to come.
I had a late night with the General Assembly. You had a late night with the court filing. We're both sleep deprived and need more coffee. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time, Ray. You're the best.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to see you.
All right. Thanks to Ray Long. Thanks to Todd Vandermyde. Thank you for listening and watching as you're joining us on our weekly podcast. Always send us your thoughts, mailbag@theillinoize.com. We'd love to hear from you, know what's on your mind, topics you'd like to talk about. We are always open to discussion about anything because I like free and open and honest discussion about topics with all sides, Republicans, Democrats, or somewhere in between. Follow our stuff at theillinoize.com and follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for The Illinoize and you'll find us. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for being a reader and a supporter. We really do appreciate it, and it's what keeps us going. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great week, everybody.